This video is sponsored by Plaud Note, the AI note taker and personal assistant. From September the 25th to October the 6th, you can save 20% with my code MAT20. Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Well, today's video is a bit different from my usual content. What we're going to do is dive into one of the biggest scandals on the UK car scene right now. You've probably all seen the headlines, the reels, the YouTube videos all about the collapse of GVE London. They were a dealership that not long ago looked like they were on top of the world. A flashy showroom full of Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Bentleys, McLarens, hundreds of millions in stock over the years, a huge online presence. They were the dealership that seemed to have it all. And yet in August 2025 they filed a notice of intention to appoint administrators. Customers rushed to the site in Uxbridge trying to pull the cars out.
Influencers like Yanni and Carl Hartley were calling GVE out to millions of people.
Suddenly one of the most glamorous dealerships in the UK was at the centre of one of the biggest scandals the car world's seen in years. Now, I don't sell Lamborghinis or McLarens, I sell £2,000 Ford Focuses or £6,000 Skodas, but here's the thing, the principles of car dealing are exactly the same. Whether it's a Ferrari or a Fiesta, trust, paperwork and reputation are everything. So I thought today we could go through this together. Let's talk about how GVE rose to prominence, how they built their reputation, what went wrong and what lessons we can learn from it. And whether you care about supercars or not, and I don't really, this matters. Because it's not about supercars really, it's about trust, how money moves, and what happens when glossy social media meets real world responsibility. GVE London weren't just a dealership, they turned themselves into a brand. They were based in Uxbridge and their showroom became a destination. You didn't just go there to buy a car, you went for the spectacle. Rows of brightly coloured Lamborghinis, Ferraris, McLarens, all under spotlights. You'd see Bentleys and Rolls Royces parked there casually as if they were Ford Fiestas. They made supercar ownership look normal, almost casual, and that was their edge. They weren't the old-fashioned handshake in an office type dealer. They were modern, loud, online, and they were everywhere. Their Instagram was slick, and their YouTube channel showcased walkarounds, behind-the-scenes clips, and lifestyle content. On TikTok, their staff would joke around, film deliveries, and pose with customers. They really tapped into the generation raised on YouTube, not Autotrader. At the centre of that was a man called George, who was a charismatic salesman who became the face of the brand. He really brought personality to GVE, speaking directly to camera, showing off deals, and generally making supercars look accessible. He was such a character, most people assumed he owned the place, but here's the thing, he later confirmed that he was never an owner or a shareholder. At the end of the day, he was just an employee, but he said that the rumours got so out of hand that eventually his family were receiving death threats. And I think that just shows you how blurred the lines were between marketing and reality. The magic trick here is aspiration at scale. Make the showroom feel like a film set, make the handover feel like a premiere, and make the viewer believe that stepping through the door turns them from a spectator into a star. Now let's get into how the business actually ran, and this is where the cracks started to appear. GVE relied heavily on something called SOR, or sale or return, and here's how it works. So say you've got an expensive car, a supercar for example, that you don't really want to sell privately or you don't know what to do with. So you give it to GVE and then they sell it on your behalf. So they valet it, prepare it, advertise it, find a buyer for it, then once it's sold, they give you what's left after their commission. On paper at least, that sounds harmless, and in the supercar world I believe that's quite common practice. And it makes sense from the dealer's perspective because that way they don't have millions of pounds tied up in expensive stock. But here's the issue, the dealer doesn't actually own the car. So basically they're trading with something that they don't own. They're running a business there using other people's assets. And here are the numbers that matter. GVE admitted that 80% of their stock didn't belong to them. They were all SOR cars. So 4 out of every 5 cars in the showroom weren't theirs, they were someone else's. So imagine walking into the showroom and you see 10 Lamborghinis. 8 of them don't belong to GVE. They belong to somebody else, they're just sitting there on trust. Now when business is booming and the cash is flowing, that's fine. But when it dries up, suddenly an owner's car is sold, the money disappears into other debts, and the seller never sees the payout. And long term, I don't think that works. That isn't really a dealership, that's more like Jenga but with Lamborghinis. And there was another warning sign. GVE's accounts were already overdue with Companies House. Now in business, that's the equivalent to a check engine light.
You can ignore it for a while, but eventually something's going to seize. Typical SOR deals promise attractive commissions and rapid exposure, but the grey areas multiply. You know, who insures the car on display, who pays for the prep, and how quickly are funds ring-fenced for the owner once the buyer pays.
This is why personally at High Peak Autos I don't do SOR. I just don't like the idea of it. I think you can get yourself in a hole quite quickly. Whilst my premises might not be very flashy, it's very clear. It's just the buyer, the seller, and the car. On the 26th of August 2025, GVE filed a notice of intention to appoint administrators. Now that doesn't mean they went bust overnight, but it gave them the opportunity to just pause everything. It bought them 10 days of protection to try and negotiate with creditors or find new investment. But the optics, they were catastrophic. Customers rushed to Uxbridge to try and get their cars back. Forums were filled with warnings, and that's when the influencer storm really hit. In plain English, it was a temporary legal shield while the company either restructures, sells, or slides into full administration. Before we get into the influencer fallout, let's pause for a moment, because if this saga's taught us anything, it's this. When big money and verbal promises are involved, having an accurate record of the conversation makes all the difference. I mean, think about it. Buyers told one thing on the phone and then another thing in person. Sellers told, yeah, don't worry, your money's coming in a week. Then in reality, it never comes. Without a record, it just turns into a big game of he said, she said. And that's why I've been using Plaud Note. Plaud Note is a pocket-sized AI personal assistant about the size of a credit card, built for meetings, calls and conversations. With one button you can capture everything, upload images or jot down quick thoughts. The result isn't just a transcript, it's a replay of your meeting, delivering insights that make decision-making faster and easier. And here's what makes it stand out. Plaud doesn't just give you a wall of text, it summarises discussions, highlights key points and even extracts action items. So whether it's a dealer promising you full service history, or a finance company explaining terms, or simply brainstorming ideas, Plaud keeps it all stored, searchable and crystal clear. The best part is it comes with Ask Plaud, which is a ChatGPT-like feature that's compliant with data security standards and actually learns from your meeting history. Need to draft an email? Ask Plaud. Pull data from a record? Ask Plaud. Delegate tasks to your team? Ask Plaud. It even pulls takeaways directly from your meetings, although sadly it won't order you a tikka masala. And Plaud isn't just for car buyers. If you're a manager, a leader or an entrepreneur, it can save you sitting through countless meetings trying to take notes. Plaud Note helps you work more efficiently and recapture your time. In fact, according to data on their official website, it can help you save up to 260 hours a year. They offer a free starter plan if you want to just try it out, or you can upgrade for unlimited recordings, cloud storage and templates. And let's be honest, if some of GVE's customers had Plaud in their pocket, some of these disputes would look very different today. And here's some good news. If you'd like to try it, I've got a special offer for you. From the 25th of September to the 6th of October, you can get 20% off Plaud Note using the promo code MATT20. So if you've been thinking about trying it out, now's the time. Click the link below in the video description. Right, back to GVE. Yanni from Yanimize was one of the first people to blow the whistle.
He said over 100 people messaged him, including celebrities, saying that the cars had been sold and they hadn't been paid.
All the messages I've had sent to me and how many people have lost their money. I've been messaged over 100 times from celebrities, their customers, my customers and even friends of mine that have experienced what is going on at GVE with George and David. I assume we don't care about them, no? A liar has no memory.
He also highlighted contradictions in George's statements. One moment George said he wasn't a shareholder, then later hinted he was.
Now I'm a sales director, so with a share in the company,
Yanni said he wasn't chasing clout, he was just relaying what he'd been told. But when your reels hit millions of views within 24 hours, then the story takes over a life of its own. What turbocharged his story wasn't just the claim itself, it was the speed of the amplification. You see, Yanni isn't a niche account, he's a mainstream automotive personality with a reach that crosses into celebrity culture. When he posts something, it doesn't just hit petrol heads, it spills into lifestyle feeds, WhatsApp groups and newsroom looking for the next viral headline. There's a genuine public service angle to what he did. When a volume of people report similar experiences, you know, my car was sold and I haven't been paid, or I've been told the money's come in and it just hasn't materialised, surfacing that pattern just warns others to be cautious. But there's also a risk that comes with that, because social media trials can become echo chambers. One dramatic clip gets stitched, recaptioned and decontextualised 100 times before the subject even issues a statement.
That's why his timeline matters. Within hours of the news breaking that GVE had filed a notice of intention to appoint administrators, his reels clocked millions of views and pulled in industry names, affected owners and curious onlookers. Add in the conflicting statement attributed to George, you know, not a shareholder versus is a shareholder, and the narrative hardened fast. In a trust-based business, you never want to be clarifying ownership structure after the storm starts.
As a dealer, I can see both sides. I can appreciate the value of someone raising a flag when people are hurting, but then on the other side of the coin, you've got the internet deciding a verdict before the documents do. I think the correct response from any dealer under that sort of spotlight would be complete clarity. They ought to have really published the ownership structure, the SOR terms, the payment terms, all that sort of stuff. They should have really done that swiftly, because the longer you leave it, the more the internet writes the story for you. Then there's Carl Hartley, one of the most respected dealers in the UK. He said that GVE sold cars with undisclosed accident history, and that it was ex-employees who later told customers the truth.
I have proof of a specific dealership. They crashed a guy's car while it was on sale or return.
an ex-employee sent me pictures of the guy's car. So they'd smashed his car, repaired it, give it back to him, didn't tell him, and then I think this scorned employee made it his business to tell the owner.
And when somebody like Carl speaks, the industry listens. That's not just gossip, that's a heavyweight car dealer stepping in.
To understand why Carl's words landed, you need the context.
The Hartley name is a generational brand in British supercars, and their model's almost the exact opposite of GVE's. Quieter marketing, heavier diligence, relationship selling.
So when Carl says publicly that cars were sold with undisclosed accident history and that ex-employees were the ones tipping customers off, that's more than gossip. It's a reputational audit from someone who has a lot to lose by speaking carelessly.
What I can't work out with GVE is they didn't promote any different fact of they were purely an SOR company. I mean, there's loads of stories coming about, and a lot of people don't know how many customers have lost money. But people who have left, substantial deposits on cars that they've seen on their website that obviously today are no longer there, and where's the deposit gone? And I'm not talking 5 or 10,000, I'm talking about 50, 60, 70,000 pounds deposit on cars.
It frames this saga not just as a cash flow crunch, but a transparency problem. In a market where reputations take decades to build and days to lose, transparency isn't nice to have, it's oxygen.
And here's the thing, this isn't the first time GVE's practices were tested in court. Back in 2022, the Court of Appeal upheld a ruling against them. They sold a Mercedes AMG GTC that turned out to have severe flood damage, and the court ruled it wasn't of satisfactory quality. Now that's not influencer drama, that's a legal precedent.
The Court of Appeal case matters because it turns sentiment into precedent. Not of satisfactory quality under the Consumer Rights Act isn't a vague insult. It's a legal threshold tied to what a reasonable person would regard as acceptable, taking into account description, price, and all the circumstances.
Flood damage in a car like that doesn't just affect carpets, it can compromise electronics, corrosion protection, and long-term reliability. When a judgment like that is upheld, it signals to the market that standards, at least on that occasion, weren't met.
Of course, it doesn't mean everything sold by the dealer is suspect, but it does mean future disputes won't start from a blank slate. Buyers, lenders, and even rival dealers read those judgments closely. They shape how cautious people are next time.
When you put all of this together, 80% of stock on SOR, court rulings against them, influencer exposés, this really is just a house of cards that was going to collapse at some point. All it took was a slight dip in the market, and the whole thing came tumbling down. This is the thing about house of card businesses. It's why I've always shied away from this sort of thing. One sneeze and the whole thing just comes crashing to the ground. With those kinds of businesses, the macro backdrops always matters. Supercars' values rode a wave after lockdowns, but as interest rates rose and liquidity tightened, some segments softened. Hard. And when you've got a business floating on SOR, it's effectively leveraged to sentiment.
When prices stall and buyers hesitate, you're paying rent, wages, and prep with funds that haven't yet cleared to the owner.
And when you add in the social media effect, the very engine that drove it really accelerated its downfall.
You can't quietly regroup if every car on your floor is content and every handover is TikTok.
One uncomfortable clip or reel can easily wipe out a whole month of carefully crafted, staged glamour.
There's also the warranty illusion. A big logo on a glossy warranty card doesn't mean the underlying risk is gone. If the policy exclusions are wide enough to drive a Murcielago through, the customer's safety net is marketing, not mechanics. In thick markets with easy money, those gaps don't get tested often. In thin markets, they get tested all the time. And this isn't just GVE. In the last decade, we've seen prestige dealers collapse under similar pressures. Cars held on SOR, funds commingled, reputations collapsing overnight. When the tide goes out, you see who's been swimming without trunks.
This is always how house of cards businesses fail. Not because any single card is the ace, but rather the structure relies on every single card behaving perfectly, forever. And they just don't.
A sneeze, a wobble, a gust of wind, and it is over.
Let me give you my perspective. I've run Hyperautos for 10 years now, and I've never sold a Lamborghini. I think probably the most expensive car I've ever sold was £40,000 or £50,000. But I know my responsibility. When a car breaks, I put it right. The problem with GVE's model is that it blurred the lines. Nobody knew who actually owned the car. Nobody knew when they were going to get paid. What happens when something went wrong with the car? That's why I just don't touch SOR. I'm too old-fashioned. With me, there are no grey areas. I'd rather own the car and then sell the car that I own. Simple as that. The frustrating part for me is that it just adds to this stigma of dodgy car dealers. When a large garage like this collapses, all the public generally think that all car dealers are crooks, and that just isn't the case. I guess it's just unfortunate for the ones who work hard and do things properly. In my world, boring is best. That's why my premises don't look glamorous, the cars I sell aren't glamorous, they're just recession-proof, humble, everyday cars, and that's how I like it.
How would I pressure test a deal? Well, first, the paper trail. Does the V5C match? Do the invoices stack? Does the mileage story make sense across MOT history and service stamps? Then the car. Not just a clean, but a proper inspection. Fluids, codes, brake lines, underside checks, the stuff that doesn't photograph well. Finally, the aftercare. If it goes wrong, what's my plan on day one? I'd rather over-communicate and under-promise than the other way around. People assume the difference between a good dealer and a bad dealer is honesty. Honesty matters, but the real separator is systems. Honest people without systems still drop balls. A system turns promises into predictable outcomes.
Right, so what can we learn from this then? Well, if you're going to sell your car an SOR, make sure you get it in writing. Ask when you're going to be paid and how you're going to be paid, and have it in writing, or on record. If you're buying a car, make sure you get a proper invoice from the dealer, not some sort of handwritten note from the previous owner. It's the invoice that gives you your rights. The next point is something that I always recommend in videos, but pay for your own private inspection. If you've got any doubt about the dealer at all, pay for it to be inspected. Also, do some of the purchase on a credit card, that way you've got the rights from the credit card company. And finally, trust your gut. If the paperwork doesn't add up, or if you have a sinking feeling, then trust that and walk away. Unfortunately, if you don't trust your gut or do your homework properly, you could end up like the guy on Reddit I read about recently, who bought a V12 Aston Martin or something from GVE, then he got stopped by the police because the car had been marked as stolen because GVE hadn't paid the previous owner for that Aston.
For sellers, SOR or brokerage, I would insist funds are held in a client or escrow account until cleared. I'd also agree in writing a max payment window post-sale, and also late payment penalties. I'd confirm who insures the car on site and who pays the prep costs if it doesn't sell. Ask for weekly written updates, inquiries, test drives, offers. You want to be kept in the loop. For buyers, always get a dealer invoice in your name. If a dealer asks you to pay the owner directly, stop and ask why. Always run HPI, car vertical finance checks yourself. Cross-check MOT history and service dates. And also, and I always recommend this, pay for an independent inspection on anything pricey or complex. If you want to be extra careful, maybe record key conversations, with consent of course, or summarise them by email so there's a paper trail. The next list really goes out to everyone, but check company's house filings. Overdue accounts are a big yellow flag. Also be wary of urgency, and this isn't just cars, this is anything. Great cars will still be great cars after lunch. Don't be pressured into anything. When in doubt, walk away. The best deal you'll ever do is the one that you don't do when it smells wrong. That's something I think of all the time. The best deal in the car business is sometimes the deal you don't do. And one more thing, if you're spending big money, use methods that protect you. A credit card deposit, even if it's just a portion, can give you Section 75 protection. Escrow services can keep funds safe until delivery, and with regulated finance, the finance company shares responsibility. Tools exist, the trick is actually using them.
As of today, GVE said they're in talks with investors, but what are they selling? As it stands today, there's only about 2 cars left on the forecourt, the reputation's in tatters, the lights are off and nobody's home, so if I were an investor, I don't think I'd be investing into that. Even if new money miraculously arrives, it might be too late to save the brand.
In talks with investors can mean a few things. A straight cash injection, a debt restructure, a pre-packed sale, or a buy the assets not the brand reset.
For affected customers, the question's simple. Where's my car, where's my money, and who actually owns the business?
If you're an SOR owner, assemble your documents, SOR agreement, V5C, proof of ownership, keys, correspondence, and seek formal guidance promptly. If you're a recent buyer, confirm finance settlements were made with your lender and verify who actually invoiced you. In insolvency scenarios, administrators follow rules, not vibes. The clearer your documentation, the faster your case moves. It's as simple as that. And here's the truth. In high-end car retail, reputation is capital. Once that's gone, investors aren't buying a brand, they're buying a fire sale. And that's why even if a deal is done on paper, recovery in the court of public opinion is another battle entirely.
So here's my verdict then. I think GVE is a bit of a cautionary tale. A flashy showroom, slick social media, but underneath, overdue accounts, SOR liabilities, and blurred responsibility. The court case in 2022 showed that this wasn't the first time, so now the collapse kind of feels inevitable. For me, it all comes back to one word, and that word is trust. Whether you're buying a £200,000 Lamborghini or a £2,000 Ford Mondeo, if you don't trust the dealer, then just walk away.
In the end, this isn't a supercar story, it's a people story. People who trusted, people who hustled, people who built brands out of thin air and then learned that reputation, like a V12, needs constant oil pressure.
Personally, and you might think I'm a bit cynical here, but I would never buy into that dream. I'd always try and have my eyes open. Just slow it down, ask the awkward questions, and make sure everything's documented on paper or on a voice recorder. The used car business can do better than this. It can be transparent, fair, generous, but only if we demand it. We as consumers can demand it with our attention, our wallets, and our choices. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have you ever been burned with an SOR deal? Do you think GVE can recover? I'd be interested to know. And if you want more deep dives into stories like this, then make sure you subscribe, because I think what the car business needs is more transparency. And I'm here to tell it how it is. So anyway, thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I'll leave the links below. And yeah, cheers guys. See you next time.